Hello. The purpose of this video is to show you how to make research notes, specifically for an argumentative essay between 1500 and 2000 words. Making research notes and doing research is part of the essay preparation process that would normally come after making a tentative essay outline and before beginning to write the essay. Here we can see our outline. This is for an example essay about moving to a vegetarian diet. In the outline we can see the purpose of each paragraph. The first paragraph is an introduction. The second one will provide some context and definitions that will be useful for the essay. We have the first main argument, which is about health benefits. We're going to make these bold so that they stand out better. The second argument, moving to a vegetarian diet is good for the environment. The third argument, vegetarianism is morally preferable to eating meat. The fourth argument, a vegetarian diet is cheaper than a meat-rich diet. We have a first opposing argument. A meat-based diet contains important nutrients for a healthy body which a vegetarian diet lacks. And then a rebuttal to that. Modern dietary science and supplements enable vegetarians to get all the nutrients they need to be healthier than people who eat meat. The second opposing argument, eating meat is an important part of our culture which we should not lose. And the rebuttal, customs can adapt to make a culture better, and unethical or destructive customs should be replaced when possible. Then we have a proposal of action. If you accept the proposal of the thesis statement, how should we implement it in reality? And the final paragraph will be a conclusion. So, to make our research notes, we're going to make a copy of the essay outline. And we're going to name it Research Notes. So let's rename this Research Notes. And just for the sake of being a bit of cleanliness and simplicity, we're going to eliminate some of the extra text in this paragraph here. These are some relatively subjective questions that we're going to answer without, based on our own definitions, not using factual sources. Okay, so here we have our research notes document, which looks at the moment very much like our essay outline. We've got a heading basically for each of our paragraphs. The next step then is to find sources from which to do research. Typically, we can go to a site like Google Scholar and then type in our keywords. In this case, I put health impact, meat, diet as some keywords. And we can see we have some hits with health-related topics and meat consumption. I've looked at these already, and I found some good-looking sources down near the bottom, which I've chosen and downloaded as PDFs, which is a more stable form of accessing these sources. Here, the impact of a reduced red and processed meat dietary pattern on disease risks and greenhouse gas emissions. That looks like it addresses our topic pretty well. So I opened that and downloaded the PDF, which we'll look at in a minute. And another one, excessive meat consumption in Brazil, diet quality, which we might assume is about health impacts, and environmental impacts, which again is definitely relevant for our essay. So let's have a look at one of those documents. Let's look at this one. Okay, so this is clearly a good academic source. It's a journal, it's a medical journal. Here we have the abstract. Looking at the abstract here, and looking further down at the conclusions here, it looks like this article is going to be pretty useful. So then we can look at the main body, and I've already looked at this. When we get to here, we'll see there's probably a fairly useful quote. As it says here, livestock products are particularly GHG, meaning greenhouse gas, intensive, with the Food and Agriculture Organization attributing 18% of total global greenhouse gas emissions to these. That's going to be a pretty useful quote for our argument about producing meat being damaging for the environment. So we can either paraphrase that idea, or we can take it word for word, copy it, and we're going to stick that into our second argument. Moving to a vegetarian diet is good for the environment. So let's open up a space there in our research notes. And let's just format that so it looks slightly neater. And so we've got a quote. Obviously, for every quote we take, which we may want to use in our essays, we're going to need to be able to cite it and include a reference to the original source to avoid plagiarism and to help the reader to find the source in case they want to learn more about it. So let's extract the bibliographic information, which we're going to then include in our research notes with the quote. Here we can see this is a good source. We've got our authors' names, which we'll need. We have the text title. Over here, on the right in this case, we have the year of publication, 2012. We have the name of the journal, BMJ, open. And in fact, because this is a text designed to be cited, they actually have the key information here helpfully prepared for us. This the author's names, the text title here, the journal title, the year of publication. They have the DOI, which is like the permanent web address, more permanent, more reliable than a URL. So let's copy that and let's put that into our research notes. We'll put this in just after the quote. Again, we can tidy that up a bit. In APA, we generally will put the year after the author's names, so let's just put that in there so it's closer to the APA referencing format. Okay, and let's put that information maybe in a different font, say italics, so that it stands out so we can distinguish easily our paragraph topic, our quotes, and then the sources of those quotes. And of course, when we're taking a word-for-word quote, a literal quote, we should include the page number. And this came from pages 1 to 2. The split between those two pages. Okay, and then that's one quote ready for our research notes that we can continue reading. And we'll see as we continue with page 2, here we saw the page number, page 1. As we continue with page 2, we will soon arrive at another pretty useful quote. Recent large meta-analyses have found significant increases in risk of coronary heart disease, type 2 diabetes, and colorectal cancer with increased intake of processed meat. A significant increase in colorectal cancer risk has also been shown with increased intake of red meat. So let's take that, copy that, and stick that in our research notes. Now this belongs to our first argument, which is about the health benefits of not eating meat, of eating a vegetarian diet. So let's stick this in here. Give it a bit more space. Let's unbold that. And again, we'll tidy up the formatting a bit. Now this comes from the same source, so we can just copy this here. And just ensure that the page number is correct. This was only from page 2. If you are going to take many quotes from the same source, what you could do, rather than naming the source, say 3 or 4 or 5 times after 3 or 4 or 5 quotes, you could name the full biographical information of the source at the end of your research notes document, label it as source A or source B or source C, and then after each quote you would just say source A, page 2. And this would be source A, pages 1 to 2. Okay, we could continue with this document, finding more information, but just for variety, let's look at a different document. Let's go to this. So here we have a different article. Again, it looks like a good, reliable article, an academic article at least. We could read the abstract. But let's go on. I've already found out the section here in the introduction, which I think could be a useful quote. Meat has traditionally held a central position in Western food culture. According to Twigg, it is the food with the highest status in the hierarchy of foods. Meat is the most highly prized, the most sacred and powerful, but potentially also the most defiling food. So that idea we can copy. That really goes in one of the opposing arguments about meat being important for culture. So we copy that and let's stick that in. That belongs not in our first or second argument, that belongs in our second opposing argument. Eating meat is an important part of our culture which we should not lose. It may not be a perfect quote, and we may find something better, in which case we can then ignore this later on. But for now, it seems like it's at least some evidence for that claim. And then again, we need to name the source. So let's find the source of that, the bibliographical information from that text. So here we have the author's names, we have the text title, we have the journal, the year of publication, the issue and the page range of this article within the journal, and we have the DOI, again it's permanent web address. This information here is optional. Let's just copy all of this and then we'll rearrange it later. Okay, so let's make this non-bold, and let's make it italics. And then while we're at it, while we're here, we may as well try and format this in a neater, more APA-friendly style. So let's take the authors at the start. Then we'll put the year, 2000. Then we have the text title. Then we have the journal and the issue, the page numbers, and then the DOI. We can eliminate this. This isn't really necessary. And the one thing that we need to add is the specific page number. And so the article starts on page 277. So this is this is from the first page, I think. We can see, the next page is 278, so that was page 277. Okay, and we would continue. Ideally, we'd find at least 2 quotes for each argument we want to make. So 2 quotes for each of our arguments. Ideally, then 2 quotes for the opposing arguments, and even 2 quotes for the rebuttals. If you want to find more, that's great. Up to 4 is a good number. You probably don't need more than about 4 quotes for any specific argument in an essay of this length, about 1,500 to 2,000 words. If you were doing a longer and more serious essay, you might have 10 sources or 15 or more sources for any point. But for now, between 2 and 4 sources is really going to be enough, and you may not use all of those in your paragraph. Okay, so by the time you have gathered up to about 2 to 4 sources for each of these arguments, then you will have a good set of research notes. If you notice that your first argument already has, say, 2 or 4 sources, then you know you can focus on the other arguments, which, for example, your third argument or your fourth argument, which are still lacking evidence. Okay, that hopefully clarifies a little bit how we can make these research notes.